Have you ever stopped to ask yourself why so many of history's most daring minds seem to falter inside traditional classrooms? Patterns emerge if you look closely. Research has shown that those who refuse to conform are significantly more likely to create new industries, invent solutions, and challenge the status quo than their obedient peers. Yet in school, it is often the compliant student, the one who follows every rule, collects every gold star, who receives the highest praise. Niccolò Machiavelli would not see this as a flaw in the system. He would see it as proof that the design is functioning exactly as intended. In The Prince, he wrote, "Everyone sees what you appear to be. Few know what you really are." Education cultivates the appearance of opportunity while shaping minds to serve the purposes of power. Machiavelli understood that control is most effective when it is invisible. The crowd, he observed, is taken by appearances. And the most enduring forms of domination do not look like domination at all. In your own schooling, the system may have never commanded you through open threats. Instead, it quietly conditioned how you think, what you value, and how you measure yourself. Always under the guise of guidance and care, it is much safer, he wrote, to be feared than loved. But fear works best when hidden beneath a smile. This is why the apparatus does not beat you into submission. It teaches you to accept limits as natural. The origins of this structure are not purely educational. They were engineered in the late 19th and early 20th centuries by industrialists who needed punctual, obedient, and predictable workers. Charles Eliot of Harvard was blunt in 1905. One small class should enjoy a broad education. A much larger class must prepare for repetitive labor. The rest was theater, a stage upon which the illusion of equal opportunity could be performed. Finland has shown that other approaches exist, favoring autonomy, minimal testing, and curiosity over compliance. Yet, as Machiavelli warned, what serves the people is often at odds with what sustains those who rule. One of the most subtle tools of this design is the enforcement of arbitrary rules. You are told not to chew gum, to walk in certain directions, to sit silently at prescribed times. Many of these edicts had little to do with learning. Their real purpose was to normalize obedience to directives you did not understand. Studies confirm that children quickly confuse authority with morality, obeying even nonsensical orders simply because they come from someone in charge. In Machiavelli's eyes, this was brilliant conditioning. Subjects must be kept content, not through freedom, but through the illusion of order. By the time you reach adulthood, such training has prepared you to accept regulations without question, even when they quietly undermine your own interests. Alongside discipline, the system cultivates dependency on external judgment. From your earliest years, you were taught to see your worth through grades, rankings, and the approval of authority. Machiavelli noted that men judge more by the eye than by the hand, meaning most form their judgments from what they can see rather than what they can truly test. When you are conditioned to measure yourself by marks and praise, you learn to seek validation before acting, making you easier to control through the promise of recognition. This has consequences far beyond the classroom. Adults raised on this diet of external approval often prioritize being seen as capable over actually pursuing what matters to them. A recent study found a strong link between academic perfectionism and risk aversion in the workplace. Fear of losing approval leads to safe choices, even when bolder actions would better serve one's long-term interests. Machiavelli would see this as an ideal outcome for any ruler. Citizens who restrain themselves without needing to be restrained. Contrast this with approaches like Montessori education, where students learn to set their own goals and judge their own progress. Figures such as Larry Page, Sergey Brin, and Jeff Bezos all passed through this environment, developing the very qualities, self-reliance and independent judgment, that Machiavelli would warn princes to suppress in the masses. He understood that a leader benefits most when the people lack the habit of trusting themselves. Yet there is another, equally potent weapon in the system's arsenal: fragmentation of knowledge. By dividing learning into isolated subjects with little connection, the mind struggles to see how systems truly function. Machiavelli observed that a ruler ought to have no other aim or thought than war and its rules and discipline, which in modern terms means mastering the interconnected forces that shape reality. Fragmentation blinds you to patterns of power, making it harder to challenge them. This separation also breeds competition. When grading is curved and success is presented as scarce, students learn to see each other as rivals rather than allies. A prince should sow discord among the citizens of conquered cities, Machiavelli advised, because divided subjects are easier to rule. In your own schooling, you may remember the quiet fear of failure, the dread of an F, the embarrassment of a wrong answer. Such punishments cultivate a fear of risk, ensuring most will choose the safety of proven paths over the uncertainty of innovation. Many of history's transformative minds found ways to slip through these constraints. Richard Branson left school at 16. Steve Jobs dropped out of Reed College, but pursued calligraphy out of pure curiosity, later crediting it with shaping Apple's design language. Their paths demonstrate what happens when you escape the triple bind of arbitrary discipline, external validation, and fragmented knowledge. Machiavelli himself valued education, but only the kind that strengthens one's ability to lead, not to follow. Whoever wishes to foresee the future, he wrote, must consult the past. He believed in learning from history, strategy, and human behavior, not in memorizing disconnected facts to satisfy an examiner. Effective leadership, in his view, is forged in adversity. This is why military academies and elite leadership programs create controlled challenges, forcing students to think independently under pressure. Comfort does not produce capable leaders. Navigating difficulty does. And here, Machiavelli's distinction between love and fear becomes relevant. A leader must understand both, not to dominate, but to read people accurately, manage relationships strategically, and secure loyalty without becoming dependent on it. Developing this capability requires replacing external validation with internal judgment. Ask yourself, what part of your schooling left you least prepared for real decision-making? What beliefs still cause you to hesitate when no rubric or approval is offered? The moment you begin trusting your own conclusions, especially when they diverge from consensus, you take back the power that conditioning has long eroded. Marcia, once a model student, discovered this after abandoning her obsession with perfect grades to pursue a project purely for her own satisfaction. That work became her most profitable venture, precisely because it was unconstrained by the need to please others. Machiavelli would also urge you to think across boundaries. In The Prince, he drew from history, military science, and politics to craft a unified vision of power. This is the opposite of the compartmentalized thinking most education fosters. To reclaim this breadth, connect disciplines deliberately. Study the economic forces behind historical events, or the ethical dilemmas arising from scientific advances. The clearer you see the whole, the less likely you are to be disarmed by those who control only the parts you're shown. Once you begin to trust your own judgment and think beyond artificial boundaries, the next step is calculated risk-taking. Machiavelli was clear. All courses of action are risky, so prudence is not in avoiding danger, but in calculating risk and acting decisively. Failure, then, is not a verdict. It is a training ground. At Stanford's D School, students keep failure resumes to document mistakes as lessons, reducing the fear that keeps most people stagnant. This mindset breaks the cycle of self-censorship that the traditional system instills. Equally important is aligning yourself with others who share this awareness. As Machiavelli understood, transformation rarely comes from isolated effort. It emerges when individuals with similar insights work in concert. Developer Alexander Chen's turning point came when he joined a group questioning the same assumptions about learning. Together, they built educational experiences none could have designed alone. The strength of a united, aware network is one reason rulers prefer subjects divided. Some institutions already demonstrate how education can be rebuilt around autonomy and relevance. Project-based learning schools like High Tech High replace rote instruction with multidisciplinary work tied to real problems. Finland invests in teacher autonomy rather than rigid standardization. achieving high performance alongside greater well-being. These examples prove that rigor and freedom can coexist, and that Machiavellian insight can be applied not only to control but also to liberation. Yet the most enduring freedom is personal. The wise prince has always avoided relying on borrowed arms. Machiavelli wrote, "For you, this means developing knowledge and skills outside institutional frameworks. Measure your growth not in grades, but in problems solved, abilities mastered, and meaningful projects completed. Identify how you learn best, whether visually, through practice, or by teaching others, and structure your self-education accordingly. Most of all, define your own purpose. Strip away status markers and ask, what would I pursue if no one else's opinion mattered?" Here lies the paradox Machiavelli would appreciate. The very act of studying how systems shape you is a form of immunity against them. By observing the methods of control embedded in education, you learn to see how all power structures operate. That clarity is dangerous to any authority built on illusion. I know this because I lived it. Told to stay within the curriculum, punished for questions that wandered beyond it. Convinced for years that my curiosity was a defect. In truth, it was my strongest asset. You stand at a decisive moment. The world now rewards the creativity, independence, and adaptability that traditional education often suppresses. The question is not whether the system tried to limit you. The evidence is overwhelming. It is whether you will keep carrying that conditioning into your adult life. Will you keep chasing grades under new names? Will you follow rules without testing their purpose? Or will you become, in Machiavelli's words, both fox and lion? Shrewd enough to see the traps, strong enough to face the wolves. If you recognize these patterns in yourself, share them. The greatest resistance to systems designed to weaken potential is to awaken it in others. As Machiavelli wrote, "Men judge more by what they see than what they touch." So let them see an example of someone who thinks, acts, and decides without permission. That is the one skill no system can take from you, and the one that would make Machiavelli himself nod in approval.